2 centuries to a time when darkness ruled. In this dark age, war was just a way of life under the reign of the god of darkness, Kali. But then, everything changed. The god of justice, Leto, along with his 12 heavenly generals and 96 powerful angels, descended to bring light, peace, and order to the chaotic world. They taught faith and justice to those who had lost their way, and for a while, the world thrived in peace. But the scene shifts to the Dragon's Valley, where things aren't so rosy. Here, the warriors of the believers lie dead, having trusted the angels who claimed to be God's devout servants. But, surprise, it was all a lie. Enter our main protagonist, Teo. He's in rough shape, battered and bruised, facing off against members of the Black Unit. As the enemies charge at him, Teo taps into his special ability, forcing them to share his pain. He follows it up with a flurry of slashes, taking them down. But just when he thinks he's got the upper hand, bam, an arrow strikes him, sending him flying. This arrow comes from Sika, a deadly member of the Angels' private army. Teo struggles to get up as Sika fires more arrows. He tries to use his shield, but it's a losing battle as the arrows rain down on him. He takes cover behind a rock. Sika decides to jump into the air to finish him off, but that's where she slips up. Teo activates his power again, sharing his pain with her. She crashes to the ground, unconscious. But here's the twist. Teo is too exhausted to finish her off. He reflects on his situation, saying he can't feel pain anymore. He feels like a shell of his former self. All he wants is revenge against the one who took everything from him. Then, things get tense. Deputy Inspector Captain Vega and Inspector Angel Pyro arrive to find Sika out cold. Pyro calls off the chase, hinting that Teo might be leading them into a trap. Beyond the sandstorm lies the faithless land, filled with people who've lost everything to Leto's justice. With a sinister grin, Pyro warns that Teo's actions will eventually come back to haunt him. As we enter the sandstorm with Teo, he collapses, unconscious from his injuries. But wait, there's a woman named Leo lurking nearby, ready to kill him. However, her companion stops her, explaining that Teo will be crucial to their plan. Leo gave her 2 days to sort out the plan and take care of Teo, explaining that the council would never let go of someone like him. With that, they wrapped up their conversation and went their separate ways. When Teo woke up, he found himself in a small safe house, his body covered with needles. But don't worry, it's just acupuncture, a treatment from Chinese medicine. Taking care of him was S, a healer who had saved his life. S explained that he was in the capital of the Canary Alliance, known as the Eye. She had a couple of reasons for rescuing him. First, she wanted information about the expeditionary force in Melidris. Second, she admitted that listening to a patient's story was one of the few joys she had as a healer. She even revealed that she knew who he was, Teo, the infamous vulture. Teo wasn't feeling too cooperative. "Why should I help you?" he asked. S pointed her blade at him, explaining they could have killed him anytime, but chose to spare his life and hide him from those who wanted him dead. Teo's anger flared as he grabbed her, recalling the last time someone pointed a knife at him. He regretted not killing that person. S was taken aback, noticing how he managed to move his arm despite his injuries. She realized he was ignoring the pain. That's when Teo began to share his story. He spoke about a time everyone goes through, a moment of immaturity when you think you know everything and fail to see other possibilities. Teo was born in fire and ash, living off the blood of his enemies. He was Leto's blade. Teo was once part of the Angels' private army, serving under Angel Pyro's command. One day, they destroyed an entire city, claiming it was all in the name of justice. In the aftermath, they finally captured the notorious Akvanum siblings, Class 1 criminals. Teo confronted the siblings, asking if they acknowledged their sins and would dedicate their faith to the great god Leto. The brother asked what they would get in return, and Teo replied, 23 years of imprisonment and hard labor. The brother laughed and mocked Leto, which earned him an instant death from Angel Pyro. Teo looked up to Pyro, seeing him as a symbol of divine justice. To him, Pyro's praise felt like a blessing. But then Sarah, the sister, challenged them, asking what kind of enlightenment justifies destroying their town, lighting it on fire, and burning her comrades alive. She called them fanatics and rejected their twisted idea of justice. Teo pointed his sword at her, reminding her of the 1,254 people who died in Nivei the previous year, victims of the chaos she and her brother had caused. Sarah insisted it was just a mistake, but Teo was furious. He argued that while people do make mistakes, many times those mistakes are deliberate. "But we are Leto's blade," he proclaimed. "The sword does not doubt its owner." He praised Pyro, claiming he never makes mistakes. Hearing this, Pyro smirked with satisfaction. After taking Sarah away, Pyro remarked on Teo's impressive faith and reminded him to attend the banquet the next day to celebrate the end of their 3-year chase. He even told Teo to bring his girlfriend along, mentioning that God Leto must love Teo. While Leto gave love to some, he didn't give it to Teo. While angels have divine vision, some humans are gifted with Kali's fire, a mark of the god of darkness. Leto's teachings say that those with Kali's fire should not be harmed, but humans often choose to ignore this and act on their own. Teo's father was a devoted follower of Leto. Whenever Teo's curse was revealed, his father branded him as a show of devotion. As more marks appeared on Teo's back, his desperate search for someone to rely on, someone who could love him despite his curse, grew even stronger. The next day in Melidras, the Letian Holy Empire, Teo's girlfriend, Belle, was treating his wounds. He looked at her, wanting to say something important. Belle hugged him, asking, "What's on your mind?" Teo took a deep breath and asked Belle to marry him, sharing his plans to announce his immediate retirement so they could spend the rest of their lives together. Belle's eyes lit up with joy, and she kissed him, happily agreeing to marry him. That night, they attended the banquet at the battle fortress. Vega led them into the Grand Hall of Angels, where the atmosphere was electric. Since Teo had captured the notorious Akvanum siblings, he was the star of the evening. Angel Pyro took the stage to present a special gift to Teo, a Ledium shield that never shatters, crafted by the divine general herself. Teo humbly accepted the shield, paying his respects and gratitude. With that, the party kicked off, filled with laughter, music, and celebration. Teo walked over to Angel Pyro to discuss his retirement, stating he couldn't accept the Ledium shield. To his surprise, Pyro agreed, expressing disappointment at Teo's decision to leave. But little did Teo know, this was just the beginning of his suffering. After returning to Belle, Pyro gave Vega a chilling order: prepare the furnace. As Leto's blade, Teo was meant to be reforged in the flames of the execution ground, quenched with blood. On her way, Vega seemed furious, clearly unhappy with Pyro's plans. Following his orders, she instructed a mute old man to carry Sarah's body and dispose of it. It became clear that Pyro had killed Sarah and intended to frame Belle for it, setting the stage for a deadly execution. The next morning, Teo woke up with no memory of the previous night. His friends gathered around him, visibly angry, demanding to know what he was doing. Teo was completely unaware of the chaos unfolding around him until his friends rushed in with terrible news. His fiancée, Belle, was going to be executed. They explained what had happened the night before. After the banquet, as the prison guards rotated shifts, 2 guards were attacked from behind and killed. In the midst of the chaos, Sarah Zakvanum had disappeared, and the culprit had freed all the prisoners, complicating the investigation. Once the other prisoners were rounded up, they identified the culprit, a woman with light green hair and a dark green dress. There was only one person who fit that description: Belle. Without wasting a moment, Teo bolted toward the prison, his heart racing. As he ran, memories flooded back to him about how he first met Belle 10 years ago, when he was just 12. He often visited a deserted church behind his house, seeking refuge from his father's hatred and the contempt of other kids his age. The church became his only safe haven, where he prayed desperately for time to pass. 5 more years until he turned 18 and could become Leto's blade, escaping the bullies and his father's wrath. One day, while he was praying in the church, Belle walked in. When she approached him, Teo panicked and ran away, only to bump into his bullies. They started to hit him, demanding to see his Kali's fire eyes. Teo didn't fight back, knowing that resisting would only make things worse. His father's hatred stemmed from the day he was born, when Teo's mother died giving birth to him. Just when it seemed all hope was lost, Belle came to his rescue. She cleverly told the bullies that the guards were coming, and they fled in a panic. From that day on, Belle was the first person who didn't care about his Callie's fire. She saw him for who he truly was. Teo rushed into the prison and found Belle in rough shape. He wanted to ask if she was okay and who had hurt her, but seeing her as a sinner in that moment, he instead demanded the truth. Belle looked at him and revealed, "After the banquet, you and your friends got so drunk that you could barely stand. It made my job easy. I just pretended to be drunk too. The guards were out of it, so I killed them easily and freed Sarah." But deep down, Teo knew this wasn't true. Belle was trying to protect him. She leaned closer and asked if he could save her. If not, she told him to get out of her life. All of this was an act to shield Teo from the truth. It broke his heart. His head spun with disbelief, and in shock, he left the prison. After gathering his thoughts, Teo went to find Pyro. He kneeled before him, seeking forgiveness, and pleaded for one last favor: to let Belle go. Pyro stood before Teo, reminding him of the Zakvanum siblings, the Empire's worst enemies. For 3 years, they had been on the run, stirring up revolts in the colonies. Pyro recounted the destruction they caused, burning the city of Nivii with their fires, the flames consuming the flag that symbolized Leto and his generals. But Teo wasn't ready to see the truth. He was still focused on catching Sarah. Pyro, acting angry, challenged Teo. "Do you really think you can end the stalemate that's plagued us for over a century? Can you take down the Canary Alliance?" With Callie's devout followers and other powerful enemies on the field, Teo, determined, promised to do everything he could to bring Sarah back from the faithless land. But deep down, he sensed the futility of his quest. He realized that Sarah was likely already dead, and Pyro had orchestrated this all along. Yet, Pyro gave Teo one last chance. He had until noon the next day to bring Sarah back before Belle's execution began. Teo protested, saying it was impossible, and that's when Pyro's fury erupted. He slammed the door, reminding Teo of his power and authority as the Angel of Justice. "You will obey my words, which are Leto's words. Never doubt me again." With no choice left, Teo complied. The next day, Belle was led to her execution, surrounded by a hostile crowd hurling insults and objects at her. They accused her of killing the guards and Sarah, unaware that the true enemy was lurking among them. Vega, who knew the truth, felt helpless against Pyro and his army. She leaned in, whispering words of comfort to Belle as the pain of betrayal hung heavy in the air. The executioner stepped forward, declaring that Angel Pyro, an agent of BOM and one of the 12 heavenly generals, had made his judgment. Belle was accused of betraying Leto and conspiring with heretics to allow a Class 1 criminal to escape. The crowd roared as the verdict was announced. Belle Vesta was to be burned alive. As the flames began to rise around her, Belle felt no pain. Instead, it was Teo who suffered, enduring the agony as if it were his own. His unique ability allowed him to absorb the pain of others, and in that moment, he believed Belle was a sinner deserving of punishment. "This is what Leto wanted," he told himself. As a soldier of the Red Unit, he thought that enduring her suffering was the least he could do to ease her pain. Teo endured the excruciating pain of the flames, unable to scream because he knew that would send the pain back to Belle. Then, suddenly, the pain stopped. It was in that moment he realized Belle was gone. In his despair, Pyro approached him with a sly smile, informing him that the invisible hand had provided some intriguing new clues about Sarah Zakvanum. He made it clear that he needed Leto's blade, Teo, to hunt her down. Pyro's plan had worked perfectly. He aimed to keep Teo under his control, using him as a weapon forged from the flames of loss and tempered with rage. Teo, lost in his fury and confusion, didn't see Pyro for what he truly was, the real enemy. Blinded by anger, he asked Pyro for his orders. Following Pyro's orders, Teo infiltrated the Cliff Fortress, home to the Bloody Viscount, one of the leaders of the Canary Alliance. As he moved through the fortress, Teo took down each soldier on guard. Soon, the vultures and scavengers from Angel Pyro surrounded the area, creating a tense atmosphere. Inside, the Viscount realized he was outnumbered. He ordered Exi to inform Jay, his powerful soldier, about the situation while he prepared to face Teo himself. The Viscount charged at Teo, who raised his shield just in time to block the initial attack. However, the Viscount quickly gained the upper hand, unleashing a flurry of strikes that caught Teo off guard. Recognizing Teo's high tolerance for pain, the Viscount continued his assault, but Teo tapped into his Kali's fire ability to share the pain. Despite the agony he endured, he pushed through, countering the Viscount's relentless attacks. In a fierce exchange, Teo finally turned the tide. He smacked the Viscount with his shield, stunning him, then followed up with a deadly stab of his sword, ending the Viscount's life. 2 years passed, and we find Teo in a dimly lit bar in the back alleys of Melidras. As he sipped his drink, memories flooded back of Pyro's words. Pyro had painted a vivid picture of the Canary Alliance, enemies of God Leto who despised him and everyone dear to them. They were ruthless, bathing in light they didn't deserve while robbing others of that same privilege. Pyro had reminded the soldiers that they were the invisible hand, the Angel's army, fighting for a higher cause. But here was Teo, 2 years later, still mercilessly hunting down anyone connected to the Canary Alliance, waiting for the day he could confront Sarah. Doubts about Pyro occasionally crept in, but Teo couldn't shake the belief that Pyro was a messenger of Leto, and all he could do was wait. That evening, a commotion broke out next to him as a group of gamblers tricked an old man who could only communicate through sign language. They demanded money, and when the old man didn't have enough, the big guy threatened him. Teo couldn't stand by any longer. This old man was the one who had carried Sarah's body to dispose of it. Teo stepped in and paid the gamblers 30,000 ferry, more than enough to settle the old man's debt. Once outside, the old man, grateful but aware of the invisible hand's signs, thanked Teo silently. After their brief farewell, Teo returned home, only to find the old man clinging to his leg, hungry. With a sigh, Teo cooked for him, and as the old man ate, he shared his story. He had once spoken freely but joined the invisible hand for personal reasons. One day, he uncovered classified information about safety but was punished for revealing it. This led to his dishonorable discharge and silence, though he managed to protect a friend. Noticing Teo's terrible cooking, the old man asked about his own troubles. With anger in his voice, Teo revealed he was searching for Sarah's Akvanum. The old man's face turned pale with fear, and he trembled as he claimed he knew nothing. But then, the truth began to spill out. The old man recounted that 2 years ago, during a grand banquet at the fortress, he had carried a body to the furnace. It was Sarah Zakvanum. He was a Leto's blade and an invisible hand. He couldn't possibly mistake her. Thankfully, Vega had shown him pity and didn't suspect he knew the truth about the Zakvanum family. Teo absorbed this revelation, a storm of emotions brewing within him. But what he still didn't know was that the real puppet master behind all of this was Pyro, not Vega. On the other side of town, Vega was putting a group of soldiers through a rigorous training session. They were doing a 4 versus 1 drill while Sika observed from a distance. Vega began by instructing them on how to handle chaotic battles. She emphasized the importance of focusing on the attacker, avoiding multiple hits, and anticipating their movements to confuse the opponent. But she had one more crucial lesson: always choose the best ground for battle. When the soldiers surrounded her, one of them jokingly pointed out that the ground Vega chose didn't seem advantageous. Vega quickly reminded them of their salaries, 40,000 ferry, and that the glass behind her was worth about 50,000 ferry. With their guard down, she seized the moment and launched a series of swift attacks, demonstrating how to minimize the opponent's movement. In the end, she took down all 4 soldiers. They were now faced with a punishment of running 100 laps for losing the drill. As the training wrapped up, Sika announced that Teo had successfully killed the bloody Viscount, known as the Red Geezer. Just then, one of the soldiers attempted a sneak attack on Vega, but she effortlessly countered and threw him to the ground. She taught him a valuable lesson: always ambush your opponent from the shadows, especially when the sun is behind you. Even silent footsteps can give you away through your shadow. With training complete, Sika headed off to meet Pyro. Vega was surprised at how quickly Pyro had managed to turn Teo against the Canary Alliance. She decided it was time to tell Teo the truth. Moments later, Teo arrived, eager to ask Vega to train him. Teo charged at Vega with lethal intent, not holding back for training. Vega knew she had to stay alert. One slip-up and he could take her down. She aimed for his lower body, hoping to make him fall and gain the upper hand. But Teo was quicker than she expected. He anticipated her move and landed a hit on her shoulder. In a burst of anger, Teo accused her of killing Sarah, claiming her actions led to Belle's death. Vega, feeling cornered, destroyed a nearby building and pushed Teo inside, slamming him to the ground. Making sure no one could overhear them, she removed her eye patch, revealing her right eye to him. When Teo saw it, shock washed over his face. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. When Leto descended to Earth, he brought with him 12 commanding spirits and 96 angels, all created in the image of man. These angels inherited Leto's power, making them stronger than any human. They served as instruments to spread Leto's teachings and eliminate enemies of their faith. However, Leto had concerns. If humans could fall into greed or misguided beliefs, what about the angels who resembled them? To prevent this, he imposed 2 strict prohibitions. 1. Angels were forbidden from forming intimate relationships with humans and must serve only humans. 2. Angels had to follow Leto's teachings and never idolize themselves. These rules established the foundation of Leto's theocracy, ensuring angels guided humans down the right path. Now, Vega revealed something shocking to Teo. Angel Pyro had forcefully violated a woman 30 years ago. Teo was in disbelief, insisting that Pyro would never do such a thing. But Vega showed him her right eye, proof that she was Pyro's daughter and that the claim was true. Vega recounted her troubled childhood. Her mother, unstable and filled with hatred, was obsessed with her daughter's right eye, wanting to carve it out. Vega thought her mother's behavior stemmed from blind hatred for her father, whom she had never met. Yet, her mother knew the truth. She was trying to protect her. Whenever a stranger appeared, she would hide Vega away. One day, however, her mother claimed she had lost her child when a stranger with golden eyes approached. The mixed feelings of love and hate her mother felt towards Vega became evident as Vega grew older. As an adult, Vega eventually found her father, Angel Pyro. Teo struggled to accept this. Vega explained that Pyro was brutal to prisoners and had manipulated her into caring for the Zakvanum family. She challenged Teo's perception, asking if he really believed Belle could betray them. She revealed that Belle's actions were meant to protect him. Finally, the pieces began to fall into place for Teo. He started to see Pyro as the real enemy. Vega shared her own desire for Pyro's death, explaining that he wanted to break the stalemate with the Canary Alliance. His plan was to establish a bridgehead toward the Eye of Leto, creating a passage beyond the land of the faithless with a small force. But Teo proved to be more capable than Pyro anticipated. Vega pointed out the 2 paths to the Eye, Dragon Valley and the Cliff Fortress. Thanks to Teo's efforts, they now had one of those paths. She warned that a full-blown attack was imminent. Pyro would remain behind, powerless in the faithless land, while the others would head through the Cliff Fortress toward their goal. And that's when Vega would strike. Sika went to meet Pyro, who was clearly restless. He complained about the boredom of waiting. The first 100 years were bearable, but after 2 centuries, every second felt like torture. To lighten the mood, Sika tried to kiss Pyro, but that only fueled his anger. He slapped her to the ground, furious that she, as just a proxy, would dare to take such liberties. As Sika got ready to leave, Pyro ordered her to prepare the invisible hand. Tomorrow, they would take the field at Dragon Valley. The next day, Pyro led the invisible hand into battle for control of the Dragon Valley. Teo stood there, reflecting on the years he'd spent with his peers. None of them had the chance to share their true feelings. Their enemies had called them scavengers, merely surviving on the scraps of their emotions. Teo started to recall how he always ran away. From his father, the bullies, and even from the girl who tried to save him. But then, Belle re-entered his life. Belle was the daughter of Vesta, a friend of Teo's father. His dad had warned him not to cause any trouble for her. Belle was frustrated with Teo for not standing up to the bullies. Teo snapped back, asking her what she knew about his life. As he stormed out, Belle followed him and accidentally pushed him down the stairs. Teo's father was there, and that's when things took a turn. When Teo felt pain unexpectedly, Callie's fire activated, causing him to share that pain with Belle. His father, witnessing this, immediately whipped Teo's back in anger. But Belle intervened, stopping his father and explaining that Teo wasn't at fault. She was. Teo's father mentioned that this was Callie's fire, the power of non-believers. Belle, unfazed, told Teo he needed to speak up. If he didn't, nothing would ever change. This moment highlighted the crucial role Belle played in Teo's early life, urging him to confront his struggles. After reaching a basin surrounded by massive boulders, Pyro signaled Teo to stop. The invisible hand army behind him, all clad in red units, consisted of soldiers who wielded Callie's fire. Suddenly, they found themselves surrounded by another invisible hand army, this time in white and black units. Pyro explained that he had gathered those with Callie's fire as expendables, people he intended to use for dirty work and discard once he was finished. With a cold command, Pyro ordered the archers to eliminate all the soldiers with Callie's fire. One soldier attempted to transform into a tiger to fight back, but he was quickly killed, along with the others. Pyro's goal was to eliminate any risks before launching a war against the Alliance. Teo, fueled by anger, prepared to charge at Pyro, but an attacker from the other army tried to ambush him. Teo swiftly blocked the attack and killed his assailant, making it clear that anyone who approached him would meet a similar fate. They charged at Teo, who kept slashing his sword over and over, a repetitive action that seemed meaningless. Yet, the more he fought, the more amazed his attackers became. Suddenly, one of the red units struck Teo from behind. He barely managed to use his shield to block the attack, but the force sent him crashing to the ground. Despite having Callie's fire, these soldiers were lured by Pyro's false promise. If they killed Teo, they could live. But deep down, everyone knew that was just a lie. As they prepared to finish him off, Teo rolled to the side just in time to save himself. In a moment of desperation, he activated his Callie's fire ability, ready to share his pain with them. Teo understood that these soldiers, part of the invisible hand, were fanatics, vengeance-crazed men who had infiltrated and caused chaos in the enemy camps at the western border. They had lost their minds and were not afraid of death. Teo realized that he had only two options left. Either he would die, or they would. That was the only possible outcome in this deadly confrontation. Teo fought fiercely, slashing and getting slashed, enduring the battle for hours. Even though he couldn't feel pain, his body couldn't take this punishment forever. He was being held back by 3 team leaders, 2 from the red unit and 1 from the black unit. Frustrated, Pyro lost his patience and ordered the archers to kill them all, including the leaders he had made a deal with. Just then, Simon, the big man, leaped in front of Teo to protect him from the arrows. He cried out, telling Teo that this wasn't how it was supposed to end. With that, Simon took the arrows and fell, sacrificing himself. The old man from the black unit pretended to be dead, while Sora, the only one left standing, tried to attack Teo. In a fit of anger, Teo killed her, realizing these people had nothing to do with him. As the chaos unfolded, Simon revealed that his sister had been kidnapped by the Canary Alliance, and Sora's child had been traumatized by non-believers. Teo was shocked. He had no idea about their suffering until now. After their deaths, Pyro scoffed at them, calling them useless imbeciles. Teo, fueled by rage, jumped to attack Pyro, but the angel countered with a powerful flame blast that hit Teo directly, sending him crashing to the ground. Vega realized this was all part of Pyro's plan, to eliminate those who had finished their tasks and demonstrate his power to the remaining soldiers to gain their loyalty. She was disgusted by her father's actions. As Pyro approached the injured Teo, he sneered, saying that if it weren't for the land of the faithless, he wouldn't need any of them, claiming he could handle the non-believers on his own. As Pyro prepared to finish off Teo, the old man from the black unit, who had been pretending to be dead, suddenly stabbed Pyro from behind. To everyone's shock, Pyro's blood was red, just like a human's. The old man was furious, feeling betrayed after all they had done for Pyro. In a swift retaliation, Pyro infused his fire into the sword lodged in him, burning the old man alive. Thanks to this brave act, Teo managed to escape. Pyro, infuriated, ordered Sika to follow him, adding Rhoda and Jack to assist her. Meanwhile, Vega made her way to Teo, who was hiding nearby. She shared her backup plan with him. Angels couldn't use their powers in the land of the faithless. Vega urged Teo to cross this land and pledge himself to the Canary Alliance. To make it believable, she hurt herself, ensuring no one would suspect she was helping Teo. With that, Vega felt free of any guilt toward Belle, urging Teo to leave before he became a burden. Teo had always believed he was Leto's blade, destined to bring about an era of peace as Leto's 12 commanding spirits and 96 angels spread faith and justice. But now, he realized it was all a lie steeped in hypocrisy and malice. And that's how Teo barely escaped Pyro's wrath and found himself in the faithless land. Now, back to the present. The healer, S, was skeptical of Teo. She reminded him that her brother died because of the fanatics and accused him of merely running a post-war treatment business. But Teo had fully recovered, and S instructed him to get dressed and follow her. He noticed that her healing ability was also powered by Callie's fire. Teo's fate now rested in the hands of the 5 council members of the Canary Alliance. Since he had killed the bloody Viscount, he was in deep trouble. S warned him not to be surprised, as the bloody Viscount was now led by his son. As they entered the Eye City, people began to stare at Teo. S quickly told him to hide his shackles. It was clear that working with the Letians made him a target. The locals despised them for the chaos they caused, and if they realized Teo was a Letian, they would likely kill him on the spot. S led him inside the council building, where the Canary Alliance would decide whether Teo would live or die. The council was made up of the Black Priestess Leo Zarmish, the apostate Hazeda Rem, the mercenary Vitten, the bloody Viscount J, and the chairman of the council, Gold-Teeth Gorshas. Gorshas was furious. He reminded everyone that Teo and his soldiers had attacked his caravan before. He turned to Leo and demanded an explanation, since they knew she had ordered S to heal Teo instead of killing him. Leo, equally frustrated, shot back that the others had sent their spies to follow Healer S around. She added that Teo was one of Leto's blades. Sure, he was a criminal who had killed many of their allies, and under normal circumstances, they would have executed him. But he had left the Letians on his own and was blessed with Callie's fire. As Callie's priestess, it wouldn't be right for Leo to publicly execute someone with that power. Hazeda then raised a valid question. Could they trust Teo, the so-called Vulture, since he had been part of the Invisible Hand fanatics? When Jay heard Vulture, he realized Teo was the one who had killed his father. In a fit of rage, Jay drew his sword, ready to strike Teo down. But Vitten quickly stepped in, reminding him of the council's rules. Teo seized the moment to speak up. He told them they could kill him, but he had one request. Let him live until he killed Angel Pyro. Jay then suggested a traditional trial where the 5 of them would vote on his sentence. Gorshas accepted the request. Jay was quick to vote against Teo, stating he would never accept a defector like him. Leo tried to convince Jay to change his mind, but it was pointless. Jay, the Bloody Knight and protector of the Alliance, stood firm. He couldn't accept someone who might pose a risk to public safety. Hazeda, however, was more lenient. He accepted Teo's defection, reminding everyone that he had once been a Letian monk and had even sacrificed his own eyes for the Alliance. Leo backed Hazeda since she was the one who brought Teo into this situation. With the vote now at 2-1 in favor of Teo, Vitten refused to support him, arguing that Teo wouldn't bring about Pyro's death. Now the vote was tied, and all eyes were on the chairman. He was skeptical about Teo's loyalty, considering his intel to be useless. He declared it unwise to proceed with someone who couldn't be trusted. The chairman asserted that whether it was Pyro or anyone else, the Alliance would control the war, and they didn't need a seed of discord among them. His comments clearly aimed at Leo, criticizing her for listening to S and wanting to spare Teo. In the end, the chairman announced Teo's sentence. He would be sent to the lava prison. Once the invasion was over, they planned to hang him along with other captured Letians. Teo found himself in the lava prison, where a tall building of cells loomed over the molten rock. He was placed in a bottom cell, close to the lava. Fortunately, Healer S had given him a needle before they were separated. Using it, he managed to free himself from the shackles. With determination, he climbed to the top and caught a guard as a captive. He threatened the guard, demanding to know everything about the sandstorm and the faithless land. Let's shift gears to Melators, the underground gambling house. Here, our mute old man finally found some luck after a long day of losses. Just as he started to celebrate his winnings, he sensed danger behind him. Someone wanted him dead. In a hurry, he grabbed half of his winnings and bolted out of the place. But as he stepped outside, he noticed his pursuer was still hot on his trail. So, he took off running. In a quick move, he turned and threw daggers at his attacker to slow them down. Surprise! His pursuer was none other than Vega. She expertly blocked the daggers with her sword. Realizing he needed to think fast, the old man spotted a wooden crane carrying a stone statue. He made a dash for it, knowing Vega would anticipate his next move. As expected, after rounding the corner, he threw a dagger, but this time it struck the wooden crane, sending the heavy statue tumbling down toward Vega. The old man thought he had outsmarted her. However, Vega skillfully dodged the falling statue and managed to grab him instead. Meanwhile, back in the lava prison, Teo was learning important details from the guard. He discovered that the faithless land was also called the Holy Grounds. This land was protected by the power of goddess Kali, who blessed the soil. Only humans with Kali's fire could control the sandstorm, which kept the angels from using their powers. Interestingly, the guard, who was also a hostage, seemed calm and even pleased to help Teo. Together, they decided to take a longer route to avoid drawing attention. The guard led Teo through the dark corridors toward the priestess, but he warned him that there would be other guards on duty since it was nighttime. To blend in, Teo quickly wounded the guard just enough to take his armor, pretending to be one of them. As he dragged the injured guard along, other guards questioned him. Teo quickly spun a story, claiming that Teo Varg was trying to escape and that the people who helped him might still be inside. Luckily, the guards bought the lie and rushed off to search the underground prisons. This gave Teo the perfect opportunity to move ahead and meet the priestess. But when he finally reached the end of the shrine, he was surprised to find the mercenary Vitten already waiting for him. Meanwhile, Vega had locked the old man inside a prison cell. Curious about her intentions, he asked her if she was planning to torture him. Vega quickly clarified that she didn't bring him there for revenge regarding what he told Teo. Instead, she was seeking answers of her own and promised him a generous reward for any information he could provide. Vega revealed that she had spared him last time not just because he was mute, but because she knew he had been exiled from the invisible hand. She needed someone who could speak up, someone who could throw a stone in the water and create ripples. Recognizing the situation, the old man, who was always a gambler at heart, proposed a deal. He wanted 500 fairy for each piece of intel he provided. Vega agreed and asked him about the mercenary Vitten. Vega was intrigued by Vitten's rumored abilities. There were whispers that he was a one-man army, equal to 100 warriors, and some even said he carried the dragon's curse. Vega speculated that Vitten might also possess a blessing from Kali's fire. The old man chimed in, recalling the first time he met Vitten at a gambling house in the countryside. He explained that Vitten didn't need Kali's blessing. On that day, Vitten had single-handedly taken down 2 squadrons of the Invisible Hand with just his bare hands. Meanwhile, in the room with Vitten, Teo confronted him about his poor Letian language. Just then, Gokjiol, the guard who had been assisting Teo, arrived. Gokjiol, also a mercenary, had a knack for interpretation and bets, along with the unique ability of shape-shifting. It turned out that helping Teo escape and guiding him here was all part of Gokjiol's plan. He confirmed that there was indeed a secret door leading to the priestess, but first, he needed to speak with Vitten. Vitten pressed Teo about whether he would comply, reminding him that the council had already decided his fate. Teo felt a heavy weight of regret for the lives he had taken while under the influence of his false faith. He pleaded with Vitten for help, vowing that he would atone for his sins. Vitten, however, wanted proof of Teo's skills. Without warning, he charged at Teo, sending him crashing into the wall. Teo, who had a high resistance to pain, quickly recovered and counterattacked, but Vitten blocked his strikes effortlessly. Teo's attacks became predictable, allowing Vitten to land a punch, but Teo dodged and attempted to exploit the opening. Yet, Vitten was fast enough to close that gap, leaving Teo exhausted and frustrated. Realizing he needed to take a risk, Teo activated his ability to share pain and lunged at Vitten. But shockingly, it was Teo who got injured, dropping to the ground, bleeding heavily. Despite the massive injury, Teo stood up, ready for another round. Vitten was impressed, questioning how Teo could still fight in such a state. Gokjeol attempted to intervene, but both Teo and Vitten were determined to continue. With their wills unyielding, the second round of their fierce battle began. Vitten hurled his sword at Teo, connected by a thread. Teo realized he couldn't fight Vitten's brute strength with his broken sword. So, he devised a plan. He used the broken sword to manipulate the angle of Vitten's attack, grabbing the thread connected to Vitten's sword. Teo aimed to stab the thread, hoping to throw Vitten off balance. However, Gokjeol warned him that the thread was made from the tendons of a hydra, meaning it was Teo who would be thrown instead. Teo took massive damage, narrowly dodging another cut from Vitten's sword. He knew that he needed to close the distance between them, but it wasn't easy. Despite his Kali's fire blessing, it was Teo who kept getting hit. Vitten pressed the attack relentlessly, giving Teo little room to think. In a moment of clarity, Teo used the smoke around him to launch a surprise attack. He had to act faster than Vitten. Teo realized that when he used his Kali's fire, Vitten didn't attack him while enduring the pain. Instead, his body instinctively reacted first. Seizing that insight, Teo managed to land a hit on Vitten, but his body reached its limits and he collapsed, bleeding and unconscious. Vitten used his blood to heal Teo's injuries. However, Vitten's blood contained dragon venom, meaning that while Teo's injuries healed, they needed to act quickly to stop the venom from spreading. Elsewhere, S was walking with Priestess Leo. S explained that they needed Teo at all costs since the Canary Alliance and the Letian Empire were at a stalemate. The best outcome would be for Teo to kill Pyro. Since Teo was not part of the Alliance and was one of Leto's blades, they could present Pyro's death as a rebellion against the Empire. Just then, Vitten and Gokjeol arrived, carrying Teo. They urgently asked S to take care of him before the venom spread any further. They carefully laid Teo down on the shrine, preparing him for healing. Meanwhile, let's shift to the third defense line of the Canary Alliance. The guards were tense, waiting for any sign of Pyro's movements. One soldier was particularly anxious. It was his first battle. The general noticed and reassured him, explaining that war is just like life. Some will be unlucky and die, while others will seize the day and survive. Just as the general was inspiring his troops, an arrow suddenly shot through the air, striking him down. It was Sika who had fired the shot, and with that, they managed to destroy the fortress's entrance completely. Now, Pyro and his army had been holed up in their tents for days, biding their time. This delay allowed them to dig beneath the castle. As Pyro and Sika approached the ruined defense line, they realized that only the sandstorm stood between them and the Eye City. Pyro attempted to unleash his flames to disperse the storm, but to his frustration, it didn't cause any damage. The storm remained impenetrable, blocking his powers. Leo was focused, using her ability to suppress the dragon venom coursing through Teo's veins. Unlike regular poisons, dragon venom was a double-edged sword. It enhanced the body and healing capabilities, but could just as easily erode the mind. So, Leo began to delve into Teo's consciousness, aiming to strengthen his subconscious while battling the venom. As she traveled through Teo's memories, she witnessed his training sessions with his father, who treated him harshly. Leo continued to explore deeper, uncovering all the struggles Teo endured, until she finally found it, Teo Varg's spark. Meanwhile, at the second line of defense within the Holy Grounds, Jay, known as the Bloody Viscount, received troubling news. They had lost nearly 2,000 soldiers at the third line of defense, a crucial stronghold. Jay quickly reassured his remaining soldiers that the losses were within their expectations. Although General Vulcan's sacrifice was unfortunate, they still had 2,000 soldiers left. To boost morale, Jay announced a reward for the vice general who successfully gathered the remaining troops. He explained that the destroyed fortress couldn't be used by the enemy, which actually worked to their advantage. As the battle was set to intensify at the second line of defense, he laid out the plan. The ambush squad would wait at the midpoint, while the Bloody Knights and he would confront the enemy head-on. Just then, Chairman Gorshas and the Apostate Rim arrived. Jay questioned their presence, reminding them that he held the command during wartime. Gorshas replied that his Golden Tooth Trading Company would supply 5,000 soldiers with necessary supplies and traps. Meanwhile, Rim stated he could provide only 1,000 men for repairs. Jay saw the potential benefits but couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. As Pyro's soldiers pushed through the swirling sandstorm, they were suddenly ambushed by the Red Knights squad. These skilled fighters emerged from beneath the sand, executing their foes in a brutal crucifixion method. It was a shocking sight, and one of the ambushers recognized that soldier number 11 was among them. He was supposed to be transferred to the eye due to his injuries, but there he was, caught up in the chaos. Meanwhile, Pyro turned to Sika, revealing that he had discovered how to clear the sandstorm. Over the past 200 years, he had learned that the storm was controlled by one person, the Black Priestess. While they focused on dragging out the battle, he was confident that his devoted soldiers would soon eliminate the ambush squad. Back in Teo's mind, Leo was grappling with Teo's spark. She declared herself his savior, but the spark was resistant, insisting that no one could save him. He lamented that everyone he should seek forgiveness from was dead, and those who remained wished him dead too. Even Belle, someone dear to him, was gone. Ignoring the spark's despair, Leo punched it, urging him to redeem himself while he still had a chance. She reminded him that Belle wanted him to survive and live a fulfilling life. With determination, she grasped his head and stripped away the flame that cloaked his body, declaring once more that she was his savior. Informed Vitten and Gokjeol that it was time for them to leave. If anyone found out they tried to save a man who escaped from prison, it would put them in a tough spot. It would be better for them to say the priestess had protected Teo, as he was blessed with Kali's fire. So, they took off. As they made their way out, they spotted the ambush squad heading toward the shrine where Teo and the priestess were. Vitten immediately sensed something was wrong. He paused and told Gokjeol it was strange for the ambush squad to be going there. Without wasting time, they rushed after them, realizing the priestess could be in danger. Meanwhile, inside Teo's mind, the priestess was working to awaken his doubts, the doubts about whether he had done anything wrong. Teo felt that Belle's words might have been a lie, but Leo assured him that she had seen his memories, and it was indeed the Belle he knew. She wasn't lying. She was just helping him find a way to relieve some of his guilt. Teo expressed that he was searching for the power to control the faithless land, but Leo explained that her Kali's fire was merely a way to interfere with people's minds. Upset at being underestimated, she clarified that her ability affects those blessed with Kali's fire even after they die. The holy grounds served as a protective barrier, made from the remains of the dead for hundreds of years. That's when Teo realized that Leo Zarmish was the master of the holy grounds. Just as this revelation hit him, she woke him up, only for them to find themselves surrounded and ambushed by Pyro's soldiers. As the soldiers rushed in to attack Leo, Teo stepped in to protect her, taking the hit instead. In that moment, he realized the soldiers weren't after him. They were there to take down Leo, the one in control of the faithless land. The soldiers charged at them, but Leo quickly used her powers to solidify the sand around them, stopping their advance. Seizing the moment, Teo grabbed a dagger from an immobilized soldier, along with some armor for his arms and legs, and took him down. With the dragon's venom coursing through him, Teo's wounds began to heal. But the soldiers knew they needed to eliminate Teo quickly. Even one of them surviving could easily take down Leo. 3 soldiers attacked him at once, but Teo, determined to protect Leo, blocked their blows with his arms. When one of the soldiers attempted another strike, Teo swiftly stabbed him, turning the tide of the fight. Teo fought fiercely, managing to take down 3 soldiers. But he was still outnumbered, with 3 more left standing. As he tried to recover, the 2 soldiers closed in. striking his hands and leaving him vulnerable. He needed to break through their defenses. Leo was holding her ground behind a sand barrier and called out to Teo, saying she could help him one last time. He just needed to give her the signal. As the soldiers prepared to attack again, Teo shouted for her help. In response, Leo unleashed a powerful blast of sand, catching the soldiers off guard. With the surprise attack, Teo was able to take down the two soldiers, but he was furious that Leo hadn't warned him about the sandblast. "I squeezed out every last bit of strength I had," Leo replied, a bit breathless. Just when it seemed like they had a chance, the black assassin, whom Teo thought was defeated, snuck up behind Leo, ready to strike. But before he could, he was suddenly immobilized, thanks to S, who had arrived just in time to save Leo. However, in a shocking twist, S offered her hand to help Leo up but then stabbed her with a needle, causing Leo to lose consciousness. At the third line of defense, merchants were hurriedly burying their supplies in a path leading to the eye. Jay walked in, noticing the frantic activity. He warned them that burying the supplies wouldn't keep them hidden for long, especially with all the traffic. The merchants insisted they were just following orders from Chairman Gorshas. Gorshas arrived, trying to brush off Jay's concerns. But Jay was furious and demanded to see what suspicious supplies they were hiding. Gorshas attempted to change the subject, but Jay wasn't having it. The holy grounds began to shift. The sandstorm that had been blocking Angel Pyro from using his powers suddenly vanished, and Pyro was ecstatic. He announced the beginning of the second act, ready to unleash his fury inside the faithless land. Vitten and Gokjiol finally reached the scene where Teo and Leo had been, only to discover a shocking betrayal. Healer S was actually Sarah Zakvanum, one of the Zakvanum siblings thought to be dead. She had been the one leaking information about Leo to Pyro. Sarah revealed her grand plan, describing how all the pieces were set for their downfall. With a sleeping princess, a foreign wanderer, and a despicable murderer blinded by revenge, she was ready to take out the last actor, Angel. Now that everyone was gathered, Sarah was about to share the details of her plan. The stakes were higher than ever. Let's shift our focus to Vega, who was explaining her plan to take down Pyro. She intended to trick him into destroying the faithless land. To execute her plan, Vega opened the cell of an old man who had given her valuable information about Vitten's abilities. But instead of rushing out, the old man lingered, asking Vega for something to do. Vega raised an eyebrow, questioning how she could trust someone who had betrayed them before. The old man quickly countered, saying he wouldn't side with the man who had cut out his tongue. He offered to work for free, sharing secret information he had gathered over his life on the streets. This appealed to Vega, and she accepted his offer, knowing he was motivated to help Vitten. Meanwhile, Teo demanded proof from Sarah that she was the real Sarah Zakvanum. Sarah recounted her harrowing tale of survival, revealing how she had stayed alive despite the brutal treatment she endured from Pyro. Seeing the physical and emotional scars on Sarah's body stirred something in Vega. Instead of killing Sarah when ordered by Pyro, she decided to let her live. In a cruel twist, Vega splashed Sarah with a bucket of pig's blood and instructed her to play dead. Sarah, quick-thinking and resourceful, stabbed herself in multiple places to slip into a state of suspended animation. The pig's blood masked her scent from the old man, while her stillness tricked his eyes into believing she was lifeless. Vega's swift actions left no room for rational thought. Sarah then reminded Teo of the horrific day her brother was killed right before her eyes, her heart still heavy with the memory. As this drama unfolded, Pyro was wreaking havoc, using his flame powers to slaughter soldiers left and right. The chaos was intensifying, and the stakes were higher than ever. Vitten was furious as he confronted Sarah, grabbing her by the arm. He pointed out that even if they managed to kill Pyro, one of the other 96 angels would simply take his place. He demanded to know how she planned to take responsibility for the remaining people. Sarah responded that at least taking action would give people hope. It would allow them to stop hiding behind walls and trembling in fear every day. But Vitten wasn't having it. He reminded her that she was the one responsible for the deaths of some of their friends and family. Sarah stood her ground, stating she would do anything to ensure more people could live like actual humans. This struck a chord with Vitten, and he ultimately agreed to assist her plan. Sarah explained that Pyro was cunning and meticulous. If the holy grounds hadn't disappeared, he would never have dared to enter this place. Her strategy was to stop him on the road leading to the eye. She had already informed Chairman Gorshas to install frost mines along that path. These frost mines were something special, brought from the Principality of Rymian. They were designed to detect heat. When triggered, the synthetic resin melted, causing an explosion of ultra-cold liquid. This meant that even someone as powerful as Pyro could be frozen in an instant. Sarah also had a backup plan. If the main strategy failed, Leo would wake up and reconstruct the holy grounds, which would nullify Pyro's powers once again. Leo was set to wake up in 6 hours, so in the meantime, Sarah needed Vitten and Gokgyo to hold Pyro off. Since they were mercenaries, she assured them that the chairman would compensate them in gold for their efforts. With a plan in place, Vitten and Gokgyo set off to confront Pyro. Meanwhile, some of the Red Knights managed to escape the flames, thinking they were rejoining the main force. But Sika had other plans. She took them out one by one, ensuring they wouldn't pose a threat. The tension was rising, and the battle was about to reach a boiling point. Sika surveyed the chaos Pyro had unleashed around them. She could see the destruction and mayhem, so she decided to take action. Using a spell that consumed her hand, she summoned a powerful statue of the General of Earth. Sika noted that Pyro seemed unstable. He used to be cautious, but now he was acting like a madman, burning both friends and foes alike. The general asked Sika if she had any suspicions about Pyro's behavior. Sika replied that it might be connected to Teo. She had a feeling Pyro saw himself as identical to Teo Vark. Teo confronted Sarah, asking if she had been enjoying watching his suffering. Sarah quickly set him straight, saying he must be confusing her with Pyro. She had no interest in toying with anyone. She had spared him in the past out of necessity, but she knew his weakness, guilt. Teo was burdened by the guilt of killing and burning civilians without a second thought, sacrificing his comrades and abandoning his lover. Sarah emphasized that he must be the one to kill Angel Pyro if they were to have any hope. At the same time, Vega and the old man were sneaking their way to Pyro's room, ready to execute their own plan. Inside Pyro's room, Vega was on a mission. She rummaged through the space, ordering the old man to do the same, but didn't clarify what they were searching for. "You'll know when you find it," she said cryptically. Teo turned to Sarah, desperate for a plan to kill Pyro. Sarah explained that he needed to harness his Kali's fire to its fullest potential. She broke it down into 3 levels. 1. Root form. This is the most basic level, where one discovers their abilities and begins to develop them. 2. Application. At this stage, Teo would analyze his abilities and use them effectively. For example, he could time his powers to induce temporary paralysis, just like he did against Vitten. 3. Development. This is the highest level, achieved by very few. It goes beyond application and refers to individuals who surpass human capabilities. Sarah pointed out that while it might be tough for Teo to reach the last stage right away, hitting the second application stage quickly could give him a fighting chance, especially if the priestess could suppress Pyro's powers. She also mentioned that Teo had dragon venom coursing through his veins, which had regenerative properties. This venom, found mostly in the south, was infamous for its extreme pain that drove many to madness or transformed them into wyverns. But here's the twist. Teo, blessed by Kali's fire, wouldn't feel the pain from the venom, although it wouldn't protect him from going insane. Sarah called for 3 guards to serve as Teo's training opponents, ready to help him push his limits. Chaos erupted outside. Pyro was on a rampage, destroying everything in his path. Jay and Gorshas were in full retreat, stunned that all this destruction was caused by just one man. Pyro was feeling ruthless. He surrounded the area with a ring of fire, trapping Jay and Gorshas. Jay turned to Gorshas, concerned about the holy ground disappearing. Just as Gorshas was about to respond, Pyro interrupted, demanding to know if they would follow Leto or die there. Without waiting for an answer, Pyro unleashed a blast of flames at Jay. In that moment, Jay remembered his father's words about their legacy as the kingdom's shield. His father had taught him that to reclaim their freedom and protect their people, they needed to be an impenetrable shield. a shield of freedom. Inspired, Jay activated his Kali's fire ability and created a shield that blocked Pyro's attack. But Pyro wasn't backing down. He unleashed an even bigger flame blast. Vega and the old man were still searching through Pyro's room. The old man was getting bored, unsure of what Vega was after. She speculated that it could be some kind of device, key, or safe. Just then, the old man accidentally threw a book against the shield behind him. To his surprise, this action activated a hidden button on the shield, revealing a secret door. As Vega and the old man stepped through the hidden door, they found themselves in a long passageway. The old man turned to Vega and asked what she was looking for. Vega paused to reflect. Serving Pyro had made her question the nature of angels. Are they truly perfect creations? She wondered. From her experiences, especially with her mother, she concluded that angels were far from perfect. They could be deceitful, quick to murder, and often exploited humans for their own twisted desires. Sometimes, Pyro seemed to forget his own actions in his madness. This led her to a hypothesis. To maintain stability for over 2 centuries, Pyro must rely on something else, like a record of his actions. Her mission was clear. She needed to find Pyro's records and expose them to the members of Leto's blade. At the end of the passage, they encountered a door adorned with the pattern of God Leto, almost as if it required a spell to open. Jay was struggling against Pyro's relentless flames. Gorshas warned him that it was futile. Fire would burn air, and they were surrounded by it. Pyro's plan was to suffocate them. Gorshas then took out 2 nuts from his pocket, stating they were going to bet everything on Jay's ability. In a desperate move, Jay transformed his shield from a sphere into a solid wall. Just as they started to make their escape, Pyro launched another blast of flames at them. Luckily, the sand around them offered some protection, but Pyro was closing in fast. As Pyro prepared to unleash his next flame shot, Jay and Gorshas split up, darting in different directions to break his focus. Pyro targeted Jay first, firing flames as Jay expertly dodged and weaved while running. But Pyro wasn't going to let up. As Jay sprinted forward, Pyro aimed for a nearby structure and blasted it, sending rocks tumbling down. Jay managed to evade most of the debris, but one rock struck his leg, knocking him to the ground. Just when it seemed like Pyro was about to finish him off, Gorshas intervened. He threw a nut at Pyro, distracting him long enough for Gorshas to rush over and help Jay to his feet. "I have a plan," Gorshas whispered urgently. Their strategy was to provoke Pyro into a blind rage, and they succeeded. Enraged, Pyro formed a massive fireball and prepared to hurl it at them. But just then, the frost mines activated, responding to the heat. In an instant, Pyro was encased in ice, frozen solid. With Pyro now frozen, things seemed to be going according to plan. Gorshas turned to Jay and recounted the whole strategy. He revealed that he was the one who recruited Sarah Zakvanam and ordered her to put Leo to sleep. Jay's anger flared, and he punched Gorshas, reminding him that soldiers had died because of this scheme. Gorshas defended his actions, explaining that if everyone had known the plan in advance, Pyro would have caught on and wouldn't have ordered his soldiers to pull back. He viewed the sacrifice of a few as unavoidable. He also pointed out to Jay that he had nothing left from his father. His status was effectively gone. Jay shot back, telling Gorshas he was no different from Pyro, treating lives as mere numbers and pushing others to make sacrifices. The apostate Hazeda used his ability to reach the sleeping Leo. He forced her to wake up, and once she was alert, Sarah apologized for using the anesthetic needle on her. But Leo was shocked to learn that she couldn't use her Kali's fire. Just then, Sika arrived on the scene, determined to free Pyro from his icy prison. With a flurry of arrows, she began to chip away at the ice, setting the stage for a fierce confrontation ahead. Now that Pyro was free, he was furious and ready to unleash his revenge, promising to pay them back tenfold for what they did to him. Surrounded by soldiers, Pyro activated a new ability called Flame Nail. This attack cast a deadly circle pattern on his targets before turning them to ashes. One by one, the soldiers fell to his overwhelming power. In the chaos, Jay grabbed a sword from a fallen soldier, preparing for a face-off against Pyro. Hazeda and the chairman took the opportunity to escape. It was now a one-on-one battle, Jay versus Pyro. As Pyro unleashed his flame nail at Jay, Jay instinctively blocked the attack with his sword. The force sent him flying, but he quickly wrapped the blade in his Kali's fire to strengthen his defense. Pyro, noticing Jay's improved control over his abilities, realized that letting someone like him live could spell disaster. Determined to end the threat once and for all, Pyro focused on killing Jay right then and there. Pyro launched a barrage of flame attacks at Jay, and with his injured leg, dodging was no longer an option. Jay knew he couldn't give up, refusing to die without a fight. The flames were swift and powerful, injuring him all over. It seemed like it was game over for Jay. Just as Pyro prepared to deliver the final blow, Vitten intervened, throwing his sword at Pyro. However, Pyro deflected it with another flame attack. His focus was still on Jay, determined to finish him off. But Vitten wasn't done yet. He jumped in again, saving Jay from certain doom. Sika aimed an arrow at Jay, but Gokjeol quickly stepped in and cut it down with his knife, preventing any more harm. Pyro unleashed a flame net, but Vitten quickly slashed through it to protect his friends. Sika fired 3 arrows at Jay, but Gokjeol managed to slash 2 of them and even stopped the third with his teeth. Despite their efforts, Jay couldn't get up. His knees were shattered. Now, Vitten and Gokjeol had to fight to protect him. Leo turned to Sarah and asked if she had used her Kali's fire when she knocked her out. Sarah confirmed that she did. Then Leo inquired if Sarah had ever treated a fire user before. Sarah replied that Teo was the first and last one she treated. Leo then asked Teo why he didn't use his Kali's fire during the assassin attack. Teo explained that he couldn't use it at that time, but it was only temporary. Leo clarified that when her fire and a fire user's fire mix in one body, they can't use their powers until the other fire dissipates. But Leo was different. Her ability allows her to interfere with other fire users. The holy ground was made from the flesh and bones of deceased fire users, meaning for others, it's a temporary state. But for Leo, it meant absolute severance from the oaths that bound her to the deceased. Sarah realized the weight of this revelation and screamed in shock. She feared she had once again led people to their deaths. Teo explained Sarah's plan to Leo, who immediately approached Sarah and helped her up. But then she slapped Sarah, reminding her that her brother was a doctor who saved lives, while she had become a healer who takes lives. Leo made it clear to Teo that while she wouldn't be able to cover as much ground as before, she could still reactivate the holy grounds from close by. Pyro was their only enemy, and they still had a chance. Sarah pleaded with Leo to let her help and take responsibility. Leo replied that if Sarah wanted forgiveness, she needed to apologize to the people who had already died and find a way to save those who were still alive. As Teo and Leo moved out, Leo instructed him to find a decent weapon first. Pyro continued his area of effect flame attacks, which Vitten skillfully blocked with his sword. Vitten then managed to close the distance to Pyro, but as Pyro grabbed his sword and tried to burn him, Vitten stood strong. Thanks to the dragon venom coursing through him, he wouldn't burn that easily. In that intense moment, Vitten managed to land a hit on Pyro's arm. As he prepared to strike again, Pyro quickly raised a flame shield to block the attack. Gokjeol decided to climb up to reach Sika. She fired arrows at him, but he skillfully dodged each one while moving forward. Then, he activated his ability to grow claws, using them to scale the wall where Sika was positioned. Sika shot 3 arrows at Gokjeol, but he cleverly took cover behind a rock structure on the wall. Now down to just 2 arrows, Sika aimed one at Jay. However, Gokjeol leaped into the air and used his claws to block the shot. Sika then taunted him about his scent, to which he replied that fighters like them always smell of blood and iron. But Sika had a comeback. She leaped into the air and declared that he smelled like a hunter. With her last arrow, she managed to hit his shoulder, and then she quickly attacked his arms using a small blade hidden in her shoes. Gokjeol's anger flared, and he lunged at her with slashing strikes, but Sika kept dodging backward. He made it clear. Today, she was the one who was going to die. Meanwhile, in the hidden chamber, Vega and the old man found themselves trapped when one of the guards closed the door behind them. Confused, Vega asked the old man why he had followed her if he wouldn't gain anything from it. The old man explained that he was drawn in by her question about Vitten. He shared that Vitten had come to the Empire about 20 years ago, and Pyro was eager to use him for his own purposes. To lure Vitten in, Pyro spread a rumor about a healer among his captives who could cure dragon venom. Vitten had limited options for gathering intel, so he frequented bars and gambling houses to find cheap information. The old man became friends with Vitten during these visits. Both of them were unlucky gamblers, often chatting over drinks. Since the old man spoke Vitten's southern language, their conversations flowed easily. However, he revealed that the rumored healer was a myth. The old man had lost faith in Pyro and found Vitten to be more innocent than he appeared. Later, Vitten sought treatment for the dragon venom at the Alliance, but the old man faced swift punishment for his actions. 2 squadrons from the Invisible Hand ambushed the gambling house, aiming to kill him. It was at that moment that the old man's friend, Vitten, intervened, saving his life. Captured by the leader of the Invisible Hand, the old man had his tongue cut out but was spared from death to avoid inciting Vitten's wrath. After hearing his story, Vega decided to trust him. She approached the door and, using her angelic powers, managed to open it since she's a half-angel. Meanwhile, Leo and Teo were making their way to the battlefield. Leo asked Teo why he chose a shield as his weapon. Teo replied that he trusted it to hold up against Pyro's flames, as it hadn't melted yet. Curious, Teo then asked, "If you do something with good intentions but the outcome is negative, is it truly unforgivable?" Leo scoffed at the question, explaining that negative outcomes usually stem from evil actions. While it's true that no action can benefit everyone, she stressed the importance of staying true to oneself, even though it's incredibly difficult. Leo added that everyone makes mistakes, but what truly matters is taking responsibility for those mistakes until you redeem yourself. Teo felt relieved and happy to hear her perspective. After an intense battle, Vitten emerged victorious over Pyro, beheading him to end the fight. It was shocking for Vitten to realize that this pathetic man was actually an angel. Gokjeol was still battling Sika. In a clever move, Sika pretended to stumble, and when Gokjeol fell for the trick, she landed a hit on his face. But just as quickly, she vanished, warning that all hell was about to break loose. Teo and Leo arrived on the scene, urgently shouting for everyone to run away. But it was too late. Pyro wasn't truly defeated. In a shocking turn of events, he reattached his head and, with a fiery hand, stabbed Vitten from behind, catching him completely off guard. When Vega opened the door, a massive burst of fire erupted from within. Being half-angel, she was the only one who could step inside. As she entered, she found herself witnessing Pyro's actions in real time, including the moment he stabbed Vitten. Vega called out, "North Star Vega, I've come to see the true colors of you whom I despise." Inside, she witnessed the horrific deeds Pyro had committed. She saw a vision of Leto creating Pyro, referring to him as son. Leto proclaimed, "You are the braziers that destroy and rule. You will bless the world with your flames." As Pyro was created, he looked upon humans with disdain, noting their foolishness and weakness, declaring that he would assist them with his fire, even as he warned they would ultimately perish. Gokjeol, worried about Vitten, was thrown back by Pyro's flames. Vega observed a shift in Pyro's personality, hearing 2 distinct voices within him. One claimed to be sent to save humanity, while Pyro insisted that mortals should simply obey him. The other voice mentioned that it was the will of Leto, but Pyro countered, asserting that it was his own will. Teo questioned, "Your will, not Leto's?" Vega was just as confused, witnessing the struggle between these 2 personalities inside Pyro. Then Pyro laughed, revealing that it didn't matter what unspeakable acts he committed, whether butchering or raping humans, because Leto no longer responded. He proclaimed that God Leto didn't exist anymore. Vega emerged from the fiery chamber, furious at Pyro. She declared that he could never be forgiven for his sins, pointing out that when he turned his back on Leto, Leto abandoned him too. The guards who had trapped them were actually working with Vega. She set up the trap to test if she could trust the old man. One of the guards, Rita, informed her that preparations were complete. Vega, the old man, and the guards were now ready to head to the faithless land. Pyro continued his monologue. He shared how it took him over 200 years to truly understand humanity. He had seen countless people, some good, others evil. As an angel filled with duty, he believed he was doing what was right by exterminating evil, considering himself the brazier that destroys and rules. However, he noticed that no one remained good forever. Once humans tasted power, they changed. The faces and names may have changed, but the same cycle repeated itself. In his confusion, Pyro began questioning if he was truly doing the right thing. He cried out to his father every day, asking what justice was and what Leto wanted from him. But all he heard was the echo of his own voice. Eventually, he concluded that good and evil were not distinct. They were two sides of the same coin. With this realization, he convinced himself that he had been fulfilling Leto's will, interpreting Leto's silence as proof of his non-existence. Teo, listening intently, interjected that none of this mattered. He was there for one reason only, to kill Pyro. Teo sprinted towards Pyro, ready for battle. Pyro attempted to unleash his flame net, but Leo was there to stop him, rendering the attack useless. Seizing the moment, Teo plunged his weapon into Pyro, but Pyro's immortality allowed him to heal instantly. Not giving up, Teo swung his shield, sending Pyro flying across the ground. That's when Pyro spotted Leo and shifted his focus to take her out first. But Teo wasn't about to let that happen. He quickly struck Pyro's leg to regain control of the fight. As Teo charged again, Pyro anticipated his moves perfectly, catching him and tossing him aside effortlessly. But Teo quickly regained his footing. When Pyro launched another attack, Teo raised his shield just in time to block it. Pyro retaliated by kicking him to the ground and attempted to stomp on him, but Teo grabbed Pyro's foot, using his pain ability to bring him crashing down. Teo remembered his training sessions with Sarah. She explained that pain is like an electric signal. By focusing on the areas where this signal is strong, he could enhance his abilities. So, Teo thought about how he could take the pain he felt and shift it to a different part of Pyro's body. He decided to concentrate on Pyro's eyes. As Teo relentlessly punched Pyro, he was determined to keep up the pressure. But Pyro caught his hand and taunted him, saying, "You keep hitting me without realizing you've broken your arm." Then Pyro unleashed a brutal punch to Teo's face, following up with a flurry of hits all over his body. Just when it seemed Pyro was about to finish Teo off, Leo stabbed Pyro from behind. Though injured, Pyro tried to grab Leo, but Vitten intervened, saving her despite his own wounds. Meanwhile, Gokjeol was struggling too. Leo addressed everyone, saying, "We're all desperate because we know we will die. Life is defined by death. We trust, fight, love, and betray each other because our lives are incomplete." Pyro shot back, questioning the endless wars and the chaos of mortals. "What about your evil nature that taints this world?" Leo responded, "We're different from immortals. You've been abandoned because you are complete and unchanging." Leo revealed the harsh truth Pyro had been seeking for years. "Why do you think you never received an answer from your father? It's you who has been forsaken." As the words sank in, the holy ground began to protect Leo, wrapping her in sand. Pyro, furious, aimed to finish off everyone in sight. But Teo wasn't backing down. He stood up, ready to face the oncoming danger. Pyro unleashed his fire cannon, a powerful blast stronger than anything he had used before. Teo braced himself and raised his shield to absorb the flames, but the fire still burned half his body. He pressed on until he reached Pyro and grabbed his face. Pyro retaliated with another fiery attack, but Teo blocked it once more with his shield. Since Teo couldn't feel the pain, Teo pushed forward fearlessly. He then channeled all the pain he had endured into Pyro's mind, turning the fight into a war of attrition. Pyro was starting to lose it under the immense pain Teo was inflicting. In a desperate move, Pyro used his flame nails to push Teo back, but Teo held on tight. This worked to Teo's advantage because the more injuries Pyro took, the more pain Teo could transfer to him. Then, in a flash, Teo caught a glimpse of the future. He saw Pyro's next attack coming, dodging it effortlessly and landing a hit that sent Pyro crashing to the ground. As he fell, Pyro was haunted by visions of all the people he had killed. He couldn't bear it anymore and unleashed flames all around him. One of those flames shot toward Vitten and Gokjeol, but Jay quickly saved them with his windshield. Seizing the moment, Teo gathered every ounce of strength he had to amplify his pain ability. Inside Pyro's mind, his victims rose up, demanding vengeance. In a moment of anguish, Pyro asked his father if he was satisfied. Overwhelmed by guilt, Pyro made a shocking choice. He ended his own life in a moment of despair. Teo was in a rough state. His face was half burned, and he had lost an arm and a leg. Just when he thought Pyro was still alive, someone emerged from the smoke. It was his girlfriend, Belle. Desperate, Teo reached out with his remaining arm, but it broke from the heat as he fought. He felt crushed, apologizing to her for not being able to save her. But Belle sat beside him and reassured him, saying he didn't need to ask for forgiveness. She had made her own choices, and he shouldn't feel guilty about them. Instead, she urged him to live his life, even if it meant being foolish. Then, Gorshas appeared with the remaining Red Unit soldiers. He ordered them to capture the priestess who had deactivated the Faithless Land, along with her followers. He intended to make everyone there a traitor, and he was the one who hired Sarah in the first place. As the soldiers moved in to capture them, Leo and Vitten stepped up, ready to protect Teo and the others. Surrounded by soldiers and exhausted, Leo and Vitten faced a tough decision. They had no choice but to surrender. But Teo was a different story. The dragon venom coursing through him had taken over, and in a shocking transformation, his legs and arms morphed into those of a dragon. He lost all control and killed one of the soldiers before charging at Gorshas. Just in time, Vitten intervened to save Gorshas from a lethal blow. Leo pointed out that since Vitten was responsible for Teo's condition, he better step up. Vitten swiftly knocked Teo to the ground and asked Leo for the red thread in her hand. Teo struggled, but Vitten's strength prevailed as he pushed Teo against the wall. With the thread made from wyvern sinew, he managed to immobilize Teo completely. There was no escaping it. Leo turned to Gorshas, giving him two options. He could either fight Vitten and Teo, who was transforming into a wyvern, leading to the annihilation of his troops and ultimately facing Leto's blade. Or he could let them go, as they had no plans to return to the Alliance. Seeing the situation clearly, Gorshas ordered his soldiers to retreat back to the Eye City. As Leo spotted Vega with her army, she feared they were there to capture them. But Vega and the old man approached, making it clear they had no intention of fighting. Instead, Vega offered them 2 horses to transport their unconscious comrades. Vitten and the old man finally reunited, and with that, Vitten and Leo took their friends and headed north to find someone knowledgeable about the dragon venom. When Vega saw Pyro's corpse on the ground, the old man speculated about what had happened. Vega clarified that it was a suicide, not something planned. Pyro had instinctively slaughtered everyone, refusing to let any humans come to his rescue. He had released Teo, knowing he was the one destined to end his life. Vega then called out to the soldiers, declaring that Pyro was dead. The angel they had worshipped and believed in was gone. She challenged them to think about whether their faith had ever been rewarded. Vega reminded them of Pyro's heinous acts, the rapes, unjust accusations, and the countless people he had slaughtered. Pyro was a mistake made by Leto. Just as Vega finished speaking, one of Leto's 12 generals arrived. The Tiger of the Red Cliff, one of Leto's heavenly generals, transformed Vega into a full angel, proclaiming her as Pyro's successor and the 91st angel. And with that, my friends, our story comes to an end.